when we let go of our protective layers, we're able to feel greater connection with ourselves. And through that greater connection with ourselves, we're able to feel the connection to all beings, to all things. And there's that through line that happens with psychedelics. So little children don't have a active default mode network. And so what happens in the psychedelic experience, a lot of people don't know this, is our brains revert to a very malleable state where we're able to really approach these things that our psyche, our subconscious has protected us from.
You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 617 with guest Austin Mao. Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am so glad that you are here with me today. I had such an interesting conversation with today's guest, so much so that I am looking into this person's services for myself and what might be beyond there. So you guys know, I love the field of psychedelics. I love what it's doing for people. I love the research that is showing how much it can heal people. I love just where the industry is going as a whole. So that's what we're talking about today. Before we jump into telling you about my guest, I do want to mention that I have a couple of openings for the fall for private coaching, and I'm seriously considering doing another Daring Way retreat in person, but here at my house in Greensboro, North Carolina, my new place that I'm here on my own. Well, 50% of the time. I have my kids half the time, but I'm feeling the call. I'm feeling the call to pull in a group of women to come out this way to North Carolina, probably sometime within the next few months. I don't know. I don't know all the details yet. But if you are somebody who would be interested in that, will you put your name on the early notification list? If you go over to andreaowen.com/retreat, that's where the info page in that'll tell you about the work of the Daring Way. And also there's a button on there where you can just put your email address in, and I will let you know right away when I open up registration. I'll probably even send out an email ahead of time saying, hey, this is when I'm going to open up registration. And that way I can just kind of get a sense of how many people might be interested in coming on out. I love doing it at my home. I've done it before. I've had different workshops and things like that. And I love hosting people in my home. And I think it would be extra special to have you here in this new place with my new life, with my very excited dog. So if you don't like dogs, then you probably shouldn't come. All right, let me tell you a little bit about today's guest. I'm so excited for you to meet him. Austin Mao is a serial entrepreneur, author, poet, community builder, and keynote speaker, renowned for his expertise at the intersection of science and spirituality, psychology, and shamanism. As the co-founder of Ceremonia, a legal and nonprofit spiritual sanctuary near Denver, Colorado, Austin has dedicated his career to facilitating deep, transformative experiences with psilocybin and ayahuasca. Alongside his wife and co-founder, he has guided over 500 individuals, including Fortune 500 execs, Silicon Valley unicorn founders, and major blockchain leaders, helping them achieve profound breakthroughs in creativity, purpose, and peace. Austin is the co-host of Ceremonia's Modern Enlightenment podcast, where he engages with thought leaders across fields such as psychedelics, spirituality, neuroscience, biohacking, AI, and social impact, furthering the discourse on transformative practices. His work at Ceremonia reflects his profound commitment to integrating ancient shamanic practices with modern psychological insights to foster personal and collective healing. So without further ado, here is Austin. Austin, thank you so much for being here on the show.
So happy to be here with you.
I am so excited, and my audience knows that I have been enthusiastically researching and talking about psychedelics. I know that's not all we're going to talk about today, but I'm just really pumped to get more information and more
facilitators of this work. But before we get into that, I want to hear more about your story. And so we have something in common. We both lost our father in 2016. And you share about his passing and how your relationship with, specifically around what you say, prestige and status, would forever be changed. And you sort of shifted your focus because of what happened that year. So can you share with us a little bit about that, and like how you got here today in 2024?
Wow, thank you for that very vulnerable introduction and question. I imagine that your audience is quite a deep one, so I'm going to start there. Yeah.
We like to jump in the deep end here, right from the get-go, Austin.
Great, I feel that. I was born a single son to a single mother, right? My parents divorced when I was about 1 year old. And in fact, if you really trace back, it was sort of an arranged marriage between my mom and my dad. My mom really loved him. Right? And so I grew up in this household where I was always craving my father's love, but he didn't really know how to love me the way that I wanted. The way that he knew how to express love was through money. And I remember that, when I would do good and well in school, or when I would have this accomplishment, he would give me an extra allowance that time that he saw me. Right?
Oh, gosh.
And so fast forward through life, I became an entrepreneur many times over and didn't really have a relationship with my father. I would see him maybe about once a month. And then a lot of people don't know this, so I'll get very vulnerable with you. A weekend before I graduated from high school, he skipped the country without telling me. And I wouldn't know until months later that he scammed a bunch of credit cards and, cash advanced, et cetera, and just left the country and moved to China. I had a very estranged relationship with my father. In the few years before 2016, before his passing, I would see him about once a year in Taiwan. We would rendezvous. In that year, I remember spending like 2 weeks or so in Taiwan, partying with my girlfriend at the time in Taiwan. I didn't even take a single photo with him. He only complained of having a stomach ache. And I really thought nothing of it. But when I arrived home, 2-3 days later, my uncle, his brother, gives me a call and says, "Hurry back, your father's about to die." I was shocked.
Oh my gosh.
I was just with him, And it turns out that he had an unknown cancer, or a cancer that he did not know about. It was a stage 4 liver cancer, terminal, and had sepsis, etc. I ended up spending the next 6 months of his life with him and helping heal our relationship and ushering him into whatever comes next in a state of more peace and love. I would say that was the beginning of my consciousness journey. And I remember him sharing finally he understands what's important in life, that it's not money, it's not status, it is family, it's love. So in 2020, the first time that I sat with plant medicine, in this case, it was an ayahuasca ceremony in Mexico, I experienced a vision of my father. For those that haven't done psychedelics, the way that I like to explain the experience is it's kind of like when you're dreaming, you don't know that you're dreaming, right?
Usually no, yeah.
It feels so real. You can taste the taste, you can see the sights, you can hear the sounds, and it's like reliving an experience. And I was living the experience of introducing my wife to my father, which he never got the chance to meet. And there was so much catharsis in that. I thought I had, quote unquote, adequately grieved him over the 4 years since his passing, but I didn't know I was missing the missed opportunities that I would never have in my life again. And that was just my first ceremony.
Yeah. Okay, I have many questions. Just out of curiosity, your ayahuasca journey in 2020, was that your first time doing psychedelics or just your first time doing ayahuasca?
No, so I had done psychedelics recreationally about 100 times beforehand. Many years of Burning Man and festivals, a lot of experience.
Okay.
And in fact, when I give talks about this, I usually don't start so deep. I tell them about how in 2020, I had the largest Airbnb operation in Las Vegas. So, I had what I called an Instagram life. I was traveling the world, making a high 6-figure income, working 4 hours a week. And I thought my life was perfect. And
Yeah.
so I went to this retreat thinking it was a networking opportunity. It was, and if you've done ayahuasca, you know that's the furthest thing from
I
a
haven't
networking
yet. It's on
opportunity.
my list, but I have not yet. But I've heard.
I went in with a chip on my shoulder. Like, what could this show me that I haven't already seen? Right. The way I like to think of it is the gap between normal consciousness and psychedelic awareness for the percentage of your viewers that have experienced the psychedelic and is just literally unexplainable to someone who's never had that, unless they have a shaved head and are wearing monk's clothes. They've just never experienced that level of depth and presence and connection with self, right? That gap is just as big between recreational use and a ceremonial or therapeutic use of psychedelics.
I believe it. So my only experience with psychedelics from a therapeutic standpoint is with ketamine therapy. And as I'm recording this in the summer of 2024, I have done that. And what you just said about how it feels like when you're dreaming, like it feels very real. So the way I describe it to people is all of the things that I've read about and heard about. I mean, I've interviewed probably almost 600 people on this podcast and some of the most amazing spiritual teachers, and you read about it and you hear about it and it all sounds really great, but it's the integration and the full acceptance of it. That's the hard part. That's the real work. When I was in my ketamine sessions, I got it. I was like, oh, that's what it is. And I've heard that, we have no real way of knowing this, but when people are dying, when they're very, very close to death, they'll say things like that. They'll say things like, oh, now I get it. And now I understand. Now it all makes sense. And the thought is that it's similar to what we see during psychedelics. It's that like shift of consciousness where we're able to tap into that. So to me, that's what's exciting about psychedelic therapy is that I can take all of this work that I know that I have written about in my own books that I have taught and spoken on stages like you have and actually accepted and integrated into my life. So yeah, that's my little spiel on it. I don't know if it's the same for you.
First, I love having that context that you've only used ketamine. Have you used psychedelics in another kind of recreational context?
Psilocybin in the
So
90s when I was in my 20s. And like you, it was recreationally at raves and out at house parties and things like that.
Yeah.
Always had a great time.
What's interesting is so you've had people that facilitate psychedelics on this podcast. So I think what I'd like to do is have a conversation with you and maybe elucidate things that maybe you haven't heard before.
Well, that actually brings me to the second thing I wanted to ask you, because when I was researching your work, I love how you talk about what you call the 3 pillars of consciousness. So the awakening, the healing, and the manifesting. So can you expand on those 3 things?
Yeah, absolutely. So the word manifest is all the rage on Instagram and popular social media, et cetera. Like, let's just do affirmations and we're going to manifest the $1,000 studio apartment in Los Angeles. Well,
or someone to text you back. Yeah, I see those too.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the thing. What we truly want in life, we're actually not consciously aware of unless we do the work, right? And so the question that I ask people is, how do you want to feel the moment before you die? Because we're all, whether you're a billionaire or you're a starving artist, you will eventually come to your passing, right? And whether you're passing on a golden throne or you're passing, in the streets, we're all going to meet that inevitable end. How do you want to feel in that moment? Who do you want in the room? How do you want them to experience you? And usually the answers are, I want to feel love. I want to feel peace. I want to feel relaxed. I want to feel safe. I want to feel whole. I want to feel proud. Whatever those answers are.
And relieved. Mm-hmm.
Content, exactly. That's actually what we want. The tricky thing is how we think we're going to get that stuff is the car, the house, the Instagram following, etc. Right? The things that we think we need to have to feel this way. As we upgrade consciousness away from like a little further from materialism, we think it's the things that we do that are going to help us feel this way. So now I am the author, or I am the coach, or I'm doing these things, and here's the things that I represent. But if we keep upgrading our consciousness, it's our beingness at any given moment that we can be in a state of peace, in a state of love. I can be arguing with my partner and still deeply love her, deeply feel compassion for her, deeply feel love for myself, because that's where it actually comes from. If I start at the end, manifesting is really about recognizing that what we want is not something that's out there. It comes from in here. And when we are doing the work to feel the thing in here, then it naturally attracts the thing out there. Because what happens, you can think of it in maybe a woo sense, like a Joe Dispenza sense, where it's like, okay, there's a quantum field out there, and we're pulling from this quantum field what we're attracting something from something inside of me. The way I like to think of it in maybe more grounded sense is that when I'm aware that what I want to experience on a daily basis is wholeness, is contentment, is love, is creativity, etc., I will orient my life towards that with my intention. I will know it's like a compass, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, if I'm feeling anger on a daily basis towards my boss, maybe this is not the right thing for me. Maybe this is my body's way of telling me that I should be pointing true north, which is towards the hard thing to do, which is to quit my job and invest in myself and start this creative venture I've been putting off for years. And so when we find that inner compass, the manifesting is no longer a pulling from something or a pushing away. It's an attraction through my own intention. But that's all predicated on you knowing it. And there's a difference between knowing about something, which comes in the mind. You can read books and know about science and know about God and know about relationships, and knowing something, which you feel in your heart, which you feel in your body, which gives you tingles through your arms. Mm-hmm. And that knowing must be experienced. You must feel unconditional love for you to have a compass to orient yourself towards unconditional love. No one can tell you what safety feels like. Sometimes when I go into transformational containers, you're like, this is a safe container. I'm like, you haven't proven that to me yet.
Right.
Because I haven't felt it yet. You can't tell me that I'm safe. Only I can feel that I'm safe. And it's when I feel that I'm like, that's what that feels like. Now I know how to live into that as my intention. So awaken first, do the healing so that you can let go more. Let go of the attachments, let go of the striving, let go of the externalizing of the healing agent. And then the manifesting comes from what I think to be an integration of the mind, body, spirit. The mind harnessing and focusing, all right? The body being your sensor, your inner compass, and the spirit being something that is completely unexplainable and yet deeply felt. Mm-hmm. That drives you towards something greater than yourself.
Yes, a million times. Yes. I want to ask you about something that, especially specifically around the healing that you just said, but we need to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. With Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers inline and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. Get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point of sale system, or use Shopify's POS Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/noise, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/noise to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/noise. I've taken several classes with Masterclass on different topics by some of my favorite instructors like Anna Wintour, Diane von Furstenberg, and Adam Grant. There's some amazing personal growth classes there, like Be More Than Your Job Description with Robin Roberts, Where Does Courage Come From with Sarah Blakely, and Curb the Self-Affirmations with Daniel Pink. I'm always wanting to learn more about leadership. So a little while ago, I took Anna Wintour's creativity and leadership class, and I love the section on finding your voice and how taking your time to cultivate it throughout the years is so important. And the classes really make a difference. 88% of members feel that Masterclass has made a positive impact on their lives. For just $10 a month, an annual membership with Masterclass gets you unlimited access to every instructor. Plus, every new membership comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Don't wait another moment to start your learning journey with Masterclass. Right now, our listeners get an additional 15% off any annual membership at masterclass.com/Andrea. That's 15% off at masterclass.com/Andrea. masterclass.com/Andrea. Today's podcast is sponsored by MIDI Health. Ladies, are you over 40 like me and dealing with hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, some vaginal dryness, or weight gain? Don't just accept it as part of aging. These symptoms are often linked to hormonal changes during perimenopause and menopause. At MIDI Health, they get it. Their experts know what you're going through and how to help. MIDI clinicians are menopause specialists offering safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions. And guess what? MIDI care is covered by insurance. So stop pushing through it alone. Schedule a virtual visit and dive deep into your unique symptoms and health background. You'll walk away feeling heard and with a plan to start feeling better. Visit MIDI Health today and reclaim your well-being. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com. joinmidi.com.
Okay, the healing part. Do you, and I have a feeling I know what your answer is going to be, and that it's the awakening, the healing, the manifesting, it's not linear, and that, we have to sort of like circle back to these things. And do you find that, and I was just sort of like thinking about my own journey and experiences, and probably the journey of many of my listeners. And I have found that the healing part is what can really trip us up, because when we get into new relationships, when we up-level our life, when we change seasons of our lives, kind of it's the new level, old devil thing, like, where we see more things that we need to heal from. And so
Totally.
do you find that is kind of where like the drain, you're circling the drain sometimes with the healing, or is it something else?
Here's the thing, like when you're in life suck,
Mm-hmm.
the right thing to do is to zoom in or to zoom out, right? Zoom out and see that all the 1,000 times that you were in the gutter before has led you to some deeper experience of yourself, some big shedding that's led you to an upgrade, right? That's a zoom out. And you're like, oh, maybe this thing that sucks so bad right now is going to be temporary. There's a Buddhist teacher, Hiroshi Suzuki, I think, and he was asked to summarize all of Buddhism in one statement. And he took a breath, he thought for a moment. He said, everything changes. You see, that's the beautiful thing about meditation. It's that when we quiet our minds and open our hearts and just tune in to the moment, whatever we feel in that moment, it changes.
Mm-hmm.
And the change can be so subtle. But if we really pay attention, everything changes, which tells us that whatever we're feeling right now, whatever constraints we feel on ourselves, that's going to change.
Yeah, it's temporary.
That's the zoom out. The zoom in is like, okay, why is this happening for me? Right? When we go from why is this happening to me to why is this happening for me, we're choosing a state of empowerment,
Mm-hmm.
right? To ask the question to the universe with an assumption that it's benign, that, hey, maybe there's a reason that I'm feeling this way. And when we're able to take 100% responsibility for that feeling, that's where we are summoning our own power to be with whatever it is. Maybe this pain that you feel in relationship, that this person caused you, that you thought caused you pain. Well, maybe if I trace back further enough, there was some point where I didn't express my boundaries clearly enough. I didn't express my needs clearly enough, when I sacrificed my own values to stay here because I was afraid of losing. And oh, why this is happening for me is to stand up for myself, for my own values, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So healing is, I use the word heal because it is well understood. But here's the difference between the therapeutic model and the spiritual model. And I'm making a big generalization, by the way. So this doesn't go for all cases, but the big generalization that can be, like, therapeutic models can often be seen as like, here's something broken, and here are the therapeutic tools to fix you.
Yeah. Here's
right?
the path to the solution.
Exactly. And the spiritual model is, you are perfect, and all you got to do is just take a breath and feel your perfect imperfection. In other words, there's nothing to heal.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing wounded, there's nothing broken, and it's all just happening here so that you can upgrade.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And I feel like I'm anywhere between like 50 and 60% of the way there now.
That's a big step.
Well, thank you. It's also one of those things where, and I'm sure my listeners, it's not just because I work in this industry, but we are saturated right now. And, and I love Instagram Reels and TikTok. And also, I think part of a downside is the mental health community. There's so many labels on things, and like, you have this, and here's the way to fix it. And it's easy to get caught up in labeling yourself as like, oh, I have an anxious attachment style, and oh, it's because I have ADHD, and I'm guilty of that as well. For me, and I say this in hopes that I'm just kind of like rewording what you're saying, that I understand it correctly, is when I work on, and I say that intentionally, I'm not a destination there yet, but when I work on accepting that I react this way because of patterns that have happened in my life, because of primary experiences that I've had in my life, because I'm a human and that's the way our brains and bodies are pretty much wired, that it releases the meaning that we put on it, that it's bad or good, that it's positive or negative, that it's going to leave me lonely and destined to be alone forever, or have really great, successful relationships. Once I let all of that go, honestly, Austin, like, one of my biggest life lessons I've realized is detachment, is just the unraveling of detachment. That's where the relief is that I feel like I'm constantly looking for.
Totally. And I'd also like to draw a distinction between detachment and non-attachment, right?
Okay.
Which I think is also the distinction between resignation and acceptance, or abdication and acceptance. Because detachment is like, this person is toxic in my life, and I'm just going to stop picking up the phone from that person. Mm-hmm. But on the inside of me, even if I don't communicate with that person, I can still be harboring resentment towards them, right? I can still be holding a grudge inside of me, and that can eat me up inside. The body keeps the score. Non-attachment, I'll share a story. My mom came to a retreat a year ago.
One of yours that you were facilitating?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. June of last year. And I'll start at the end. A month after the retreat, my mom went to get a biopsy of tumors that she had on her liver, and they had all disappeared. And the doctor was shocked. He was like, how did this happen? And so let me go into the story. In the first ceremony with psilocybin, she proceeded to have what anyone would qualify as an extraordinarily bad trip.
Okay. Oh dear.
And I'm leading the ceremony. And by the way, I stacked the cards in my favor. I had amazing co-facilitators. We have some of the top psychologists in the world. This guy, Jerry, who I'm developing the instructor training with, is 20-year Catholic priest, became a Zen monk, then became a top psychologist in the world, led the team during the Afghan war that redefined PTSD treatment. I mean, all around mental and spiritual health badass, right? Mm-hmm. He comes to me and he's like, Austin, do you realize that your mom wants to leave right now? She wanted to get an Uber out of there in their ceremony. She wanted the first flight out. I said to him, I'm aware, and I know fully ready right now that my mom, I may need to let her go home traumatized. Mm-hmm. Like, if she left in that moment, our relationship, she didn't want to talk to me ever again. She thought it was the devil.
Holy moly.
Oh yeah.
Not
It
just,
was,
not only was she having a bad experience, but then she was making it mean something about you and your work. Oh my gosh. Okay. Please continue.
oh yeah. 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 It was like 30 minutes of hearing the most hurtful things a mother could possibly say to their
Oh
kid,
my
you know?
gosh. Hmm.
Yeah. And what I learned from that was non-attachment. Because the next day, she asked me to get the first flight out. So I booked a flight. For whatever reason, the SMS, the text message for the confirmation didn't come through yet. And then she told the group, my son's manipulating me again, just like men had always done in my life, and blah,
Oh
blah, blah, blah.
no. Hmm.
Something very different about Ceremonia is we have a lot of wraparound workshops and services. And one of the processes is called circling, where we gather in a circle and we integrate by sharing present moment impact, present moment curiosity, compassion for each other, right? We can go into that later. And as she was sharing this, she gets the text message. And an aha comes into her psyche. She realizes that the way that she's been treating me is coming from distrust that she's had in the masculine all her life, because she was hurt by the masculine all her life. And then she decided to stay. In the final of our 3 ceremonies, my mom's an opera singer. She sang in ceremony. She's very deeply religious too. So she sang a ceremony to Jesus Christ, or about Jesus Christ, in our ceremony, which was beautiful. And she cried and whispered to Jerry, who was a priest before, she's like, Jesus is here.
Oh my gosh.
Jesus is here, which is the most, going from my son is possessed by the devil and Satan to Jesus is here, as she was feeling the incredible amount of healing that was happening for everybody in that container. That's what healing is.
Yeah. When you started to tell the story and you said that, you were watching your mom have what would call a bad trip, my first thought was, oh, she's going to have whatever experience she's going to have. And
Totally.
as a facilitator, that's what we need to do, instead of trying to, run around like a chicken with her head cut off, trying to fix it and make everything better. And oh my gosh, but that had to have been so difficult to do with someone you have such a tight emotional attachment with. Whew, that's real work on your end as a facilitator.
Well, you just mentioned like being a facilitator. This is how I really learned non-attachment. And there's the spiritual woo side of me that's like, yeah, I needed that upgrade in order to do what I'm doing. Because, we've now facilitated over 200 individuals, right? We have like 130 5-star testimonials. We're now guaranteeing results, like literally guaranteed money back if you don't experience what you think of as a transformation. Okay. And but we get people with like combat veterans who come in with complex PTSD. We get people who have been on depression medication for 20 years, right? And they're like, how can this change my life the way that I've heard? And you can just imagine in the ceremonies, we had someone relive an experience of seeing their best friend blown up by a missile in front of them. A horrific experience to have. And it's necessary that I have, as a facilitator, an embodiment of non-attachment. Because if I want to change that person in that moment, we call it in the field manipulating them into wellness, right?
Yeah.
Which at face value might be like, oh, that's a good thing. You're helping them feel better. But here's the thing. Our orientation is towards self-empowerment, because you might feel better in that moment. But 10 years from now, when you have something else uncertain happen in your life, another parent passing, let's say, what are you going to do then? Are you going to continue going back to the medicine, continue going back to the psychedelic experience? In that way, then we're no different than the Western medicinal pharmaceutical model.
Keeping
so the
you
key
reliant.
is, yes, the key is to help people feel their feelings no matter what. You feel shame, feel the shame. You feel love, feel the love. You feel anger, feel the anger, and it's okay.
It's all part of the human experience. Thank you for sharing all of that too, and such a vulnerable story about your mom. The last part that you talked about, Western medicine, can you sort of, for lack of a better expression, like draw a line between how psychedelics help integrate modern mental health practices? Like, you mentioned things like medication and I have done things like EMDR and cognitive behavioral therapy, which has been helpful. I will say, all of it has been helpful to some extent, some more than others. But is there kind of some commonalities or lines that you can draw between psychedelics and those things?
Oh, 100%. Let's start with the neuroscience. The Imperial College of London Center for Psychedelic Studies put advanced meditators clocking over 30,000 hours. Like these are monks, right? That have lived on mountaintops through functional MRI scans, and those on, in that case, it was the psychedelic LSD. Okay, and I think this was in 2016. And they found that two areas of the brain called the default mode network were temporarily quieted in both. Now, the default mode network is like your patterning section of the brain. A pattern might be like, as a kid, you touch a hot pan, it's hot, right? And burns you. You're like, okay, I form a pattern, a neurological link between two neurons that says, don't touch hot pans because you're going to get burnt. But a complex pattern might be like, my parents divorced when I was very young. I was always trying to save my mom from pain. So a complex pattern is that savior complex that I grew up with. Very, very, very complex pattern, let me tell you. And that's all like protective layers. So what psychology now says is these are protective parts of us. There's a therapeutic model called internal family systems, IFS. That's the fastest growing therapeutic modality. And it says that these protective parts are just trying to protect us from feeling the sadness, the shame, the guilt, the burdens that our wounded inner children parts hold. Burdens like, I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, I'm alone, I'm bad, etc. And so there's the neuroscience that connects to the psychology. And then the spirituality basically says that everybody, there are many religions. This is what I believe. There are many religions, but the truth is only one. These are songs in the lyrics, right? And spirituality is tricky for a lot of people because people get caught up in the words. If I say the word God, that might invoke a very different image or idea for you, for me, for someone else. It might be a bearded white man in the clouds for one person. It might be a fat smiling Buddha for another, right? But if we abstract out of the idea and go into the feeling of what it feels like to be connected, when you feel the connection of God, well, that feeling is like, oh, I can look at you and you can look at me. And we're like, you feel that? I feel that too. The same thing happens with the word love. Like how many reels of film and volumes of book have been written about the word love to try to explain what that is. And yet that feeling, when we feel it, we're like, I feel this. And you've felt it before in your life too. And we can connect on that feeling, even though it's so unique to us. So the spirituality, I believe, says that when we let go of our protective layers, we're able to feel greater connection with ourselves. And through that greater connection with ourselves, we're able to feel the connection to all beings, to all things, right? And so you can trace like the biochemistry of this default mode network to the protective layers in psychotherapy to the spirituality of how we experience the divine when we surrender, when we let go. And there's that through line that happens with psychedelics because in the default mode network, in that study, it was as if our brains reverted to like the brains of advanced meditators, which is actually the same as the brains of little children.
Oh, wow.
So little children don't have a active default mode network. They haven't had the programming yet.
Yeah.
And so what happens in the psychedelic experience, a lot of people don't know this, is our brains revert to a very malleable state where we're able to really approach these things that our psyche, our subconscious has protected us from. That's why we're able to look at. We had a participant look at his parents were killed in a car accident when he was 10 and he was in the backseat. Horrific accident. But he's able to look at that, observe it from a distance, and experience what in spirituality we call the isness of it. That if we let go of the judgment of it, as you indicated before, the good and the bad, then it just is. It's just an experience that is. You can draw through from that experience and all of the other experiences, both great and terrifying, throughout his life, throughout my life, all the way to the present moment where I'm here experiencing myself. And I can feel grateful for that. I can feel grateful for even the traumatic things that have happened to me because it all brought me here to this moment now.
It's a lot. I have a feeling this is going to be one of those episodes where people have to like back up and like hear you again, because like so many things that you say could be like an entire thesis. I love it, especially when we're on this topic. I absolutely love it. And fascinating, really, about the brain scans and it showing what it looks like to, have the brain of or what it looks like as a child. So there's two interesting things that I've experienced that may have to do with the subconscious. When I was a lot younger, and I didn't know what this was until, I don't know, a handful of years ago, I had a psychic on my show, and she was talking about different ways of mediumship and psychic abilities. And she talked about being clairaudient. And I thought, oh, like everybody doesn't experience that. Like, here's voices that aren't thoughts, but aren't the actual voice of someone else. And I experience that very infrequently now, but I did a lot as a child. I heard whatever voice that was. And once I told my mom, and I'm like, Mom, I hear a voice sometimes. And I just was very casual about it. And she's like, oh, that's God talking to you. And, whether it is or whether it isn't, it's some kind of psychic ability. But I find it interesting that it happened more as a child, and also sleep paralysis. So I experienced sleep paralysis, and this is not something that I want to experience a lot more, but it only happens once every few years now. But as a child, it happened once every few months, to the point where my mom didn't know what I was talking about when I would explain it to her. And she took me to a doctor, and the doctor actually knew what it was and explained it to her. It's not life-threatening. It's just something that some people experience. And that has to do with the subconscious as well. So it's interesting that it's almost as if like that the veil isn't as thick when we're children between those 2 points. I don't know. That's how I look at it.
Here's what happens as a kid. You start crying, and then mommy and daddy are like, don't cry, put a smile on your face, right? You start yelling, and mommy and daddy are like, don't yell, here's a lollipop. What happens in that moment is our brains start to program this thought that what I'm feeling is not okay. Right. I should be feeling something else. And in that moment, we start to distrust what we experience. In other words, what gets ingrained is what I am experiencing is not real. Someone out there is telling me this other thing is more important, is what is truly real. Society, culture, parents, whatever it is, right? The repetition of that leads us to numb ourselves, because we're like, I shouldn't be feeling this thing. I should be doing this other thing. I shouldn't pursue being an artist. I should pursue being a doctor. And then, because it is impossible to actually quell our inner voice without quelling everything else, which is like all our happiness and our joy, it's impossible to shut down our sadness without shutting down the good stuff in life. We start to become shells of who we are. And eventually, we get to the place where we're suffering so much that we're like, I've had enough, and I'm going to go do something about it. And that's when we then go find whatever modality you want to find, right? That could be therapy, that could be psychedelics, that could be tantra, that could be whatever it is.
Meditation,
Or meditation, whatever's your jam, right? I often reference Buddhism because I think it has a lot to teach us, whether or not you believe in the religion. But Buddhism says that life is suffering, and the suffering leads you to a place where you get to muster the courage to say, I've had enough. And you go and change. You make an intention to change. You discover more of yourself, and you go through that repatterning where you start to trust yourself more. And you originally asked the question of like, how does Western medicine or Western modalities integrate into this? Well, we expect to be one of the first licensed centers in Colorado to train and license other practitioners under Colorado state law, which is a historic moment right now for the psychedelic healing field. What our facilitators learn, and actually if you come as a participant, like what people experience is a combination of both West meets East meets South American indigenous modalities. On the West, it's internal family systems, somatic experiencing, Gestalt therapy, circling. On the East, it's mindfulness practices from various different, meditation traditions. And in the South American indigenous, it's the shamanic ceremonies that we hold in the ayahuasca tradition. And it's that fusion of the different models where we're able to blend and take from them the things that we believe works and that we've observed over hundreds of individuals works to lead people into greater mindfulness of what they're experiencing right now, right? Greater connection with all the other humans that begin as strangers and conclude as family. And the most important part, into self-empowerment.
Yeah.
So that they can meet themselves wherever they are at, particularly in the psychedelic experience there, and then integrate that into their lives.
I love that you keep coming back to that, the self-empowerment part, and in terms of, learning the lessons for yourself and how to take those tools and strategies home with you into your personal and even your professional life. We need to take one more ad break. And when we come back, I just have a couple more questions for you. So we'll be right back. When you're listening to a song on the radio and you get the profound feeling that the song playing was written about you, now imagine having the power to gift that same incredible feeling to someone you love with an original song from Songfinch that actually is written just for them. Songfinch lets you create an original radio quality song inspired by your own life and the people you love. It's completely unique, personal, and lasts forever. Whether your song is for Father's Day, an upcoming graduation, wedding, or anniversary, or even just a gift to show your loved one how much you care, start your song now to lock in one of Songfinch's top artists. I gifted Songfinch to myself, a song about my late father, and I'm so excited to play you a clip.
Flipping through the slides of learning how to live and how to love, and coming undone a father, daughters without, so she writes it down.
One of my clients heard about Songfinch from this podcast, and so she had a song created for her son who was graduating, and she told me that they both cried when she played it for him and that it exceeded her expectations. For a limited time, Songfinch is letting our listeners upload their song to Spotify for free, so you and the lucky person you gift it to can listen to it anywhere, anytime. Go to songfinch.com/noise and start your song. After you purchase, you'll be prompted to add Spotify streaming for your original song for free, a $50 value. Again, my URL is songfinch.com/noise. Don't forget to share your song with us too. songfinch.com/noise.
I'd like to introduce you to the Minimalist Moms podcast. It's hard enough being a mom, and the last thing you need is stress from too much stuff and an overcrowded schedule. For too long, I lived with the mindset that bigger was better, and the more I added to my life, instead of feeling better, I felt overwhelmed. It was time for a radical new mindset. Less is more. I'm not into extremes. I didn't throw everything away. My brand of minimalism is more about adding than subtracting. Get rid of the excess to make room for what you love. In other words, it's about living life with purpose. I hope you'll listen in, and my guest and myself can inspire you to think more and do with less. The Minimalist Moms podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey there, I'm Debbie Reber, the founder of Tilt Parenting and the author of the book Differently Wired. The mission of Tilt is to change the way neurodivergence, whether that's having a learning disability, having ADHD, being gifted, autistic, or some combination of all of the above, is perceived and experienced so differently wired kids and the parents like us raising them can truly thrive. On the Tilt Parenting podcast, I get to talk with authors, therapists, educators, and parenting experts who are committed to this mission. I ask the questions my listeners are most curious about when it comes to supporting our kids. And in turn, my guests share strategies for challenges, out-of-the-box ideas for navigating school, best practices for therapies, tips for advocating, and so many thoughtful insights on what it really takes to help our kids grow up feeling seen and respected so they can create awesome lives for themselves. I know that raising a differently wired kid can feel overwhelming and isolating, but I promise you, you are not alone, and it can feel so much better. If you're on this parenting journey, come listen to Tilt Parenting. Together, we can shift this paradigm and show up for our exceptional kids with hope, possibility, and joy.
For people who might be still a little reluctant to even look into psychedelic therapy, what are some misconceptions, and where should someone start?
So the number one thing that we hear is around legality. So first of all, it's state level legal in 2 states, in Oregon and in Colorado, right? And we have a federal exemption as a religious organization. We're a church serving psilocybin mushrooms just like the Catholic Church would serve wine to kids. And so both at a state and federal level, we have a legal operation. The second is like, isn't this a drug? And I make a distinction between drug, medicine, and sacrament. Drug, I mean, people take psychedelics as a drug. I've taken psychedelics as a drug, gone to festivals and events and stuff like that. But a medicine is with much greater intentionality. You can take Adderall as a drug, right? And some people do. But you can also take it as a medicine for something that is an ailment that many people have suffered from. And a sacrament is when you take it with the intention of spiritual connection, which is how we serve this substance. What's interesting is a lot of people don't realize that in the 50s and 60s, psychedelic medicine was the most studied medicine in the history of psychology. Over 100,000 participants and over 1,000 studies. It was considered a revolution. Everyone was so excited about it. And then what happened is Nixon, in order to disenfranchise minority voters, scheduled psychedelics alongside cannabis, so to put Black and Hispanic voters into prisons, which actually worked, by the way. He didn't get reelected, but it worked. It got associated with the anti-Vietnam conflict. And it was like, let's put all the hippies and all the minorities into prison, and then I'll get reelected. That's how it got scheduled. So then we went into the dark ages.
Timothy Leary didn't really help either with the way he was, kind of being the spokesperson.
Totally.
Yeah, that whole thing. He meant well.
We just had his son Zach Leary on our podcast called Modern Enlightenment, and he meant well. But there's also the spiritual woo-woo side of me that's like, it had to happen that way. We had a pendulum that swung. Everyone's so excited about this thing. Everyone's taking LSD every day. And then, but here's a reality check, guys. In 2013, Johns Hopkins University got permission to study it again. Boom. Now the research shows the FDA has fast-tracked it. MDMA may become legal. So ketamine was federally legal in 2019, first psychedelic to get that. MDMA, an empathogen, may become federally legal on August 11th of this year. The FDA is expecting to legalize psilocybin next year or the year after, or we are expecting that. It's been fast-tracked by the FDA and called a breakthrough therapy drug. So now, once again, it's one of the most studied medicines in psychiatry. It is rated to be one of the safest medicines on the planet. And no wonder, because there isn't a known lethal dose of it. Like I think the lethal dose is something like 20 pounds of mushrooms or something, which no one could possibly eat.
Right. You don't want to consume that.
Yeah. So it's extraordinarily safe. It's one of the most studied psychiatric medicines. It is state level legal and soon to be federally level legal. And you can find operations like ours, doesn't have to be ours, but you can find operations that are both federal and state level legal. And it's supported by some of the top psychologists in the world, like the founders and creators of some of the most advanced therapeutic models advocate for psychedelic medicine, such as Internal Family Systems founder Dick Schwartz.
It's exciting. It's so exciting. Thank you for that kind of quick rundown. Unfortunately, we have to close up, but before I ask the final two questions, can you tell us about, is it called Ceremonia? What you facilitate? Ceremonia. I'm curious, how do you ensure safety, that people are safe? You mentioned you have people that are trained, and it's not just you with like 60 people, and like what does it actually look like? Can you kind of just like walk us through what one would expect if they went to one of your retreats?
So first I'll share the things that we kind of like have on paper, right?
Yeah.
The bare bones necessities. We have a medical director, we do a health intake form. So we have someone consult you who is licensed, a licensed physician that consults you on your body and what medications you're taking, contraindications, so on and so forth, and helps support you in a plan to wean off whatever you're on, if you're on something at all. So here's the interesting thing about what we do. We are creating predictable outcomes, which is why we're able to guarantee results.
Yeah.
Right? And the way that we do that is our protocol is to support you into a deeper awareness of yourself under our mindfulness pillar. Like, oh, these are the things that I'm feeling. What's that like? What's it like to feel this sensation in my heart? And this, what's it like to feel this tension in my throat? To approach with curiosity and compassion. And then we help people feel connection. So the way that we facilitate is really well-defined workshops from very advanced techniques that help us feel closer to each other than we do with family, right? So within 4 hours, people who came in as strangers say that we've had a couple come in that said within 1 hour workshop that they have felt a deeper connection with each other than they had felt in 20 years.
I believe it.
You know?
I do.
And that's all towards self-empowerment again. And all of this is designed by some of the leading minds in both spirituality and psychology, right? And iterated upon. So we have world-class facilitators, world-class psychologists on our team. But what really matters is that when people finally take the sacrament, it's not like in most places where you come in, you shake hands with each other, 2 hours later, you're having a trip with strangers, right? It's a very thought through and developed protocol. We're about to facilitate our 30th retreat in 2 years, where it's almost like sitting, if you imagine being in a meditation retreat with your best friends for a week and then sitting with a psychedelic sacrament. Mm-hmm. The kind of safety that you would self-generate because you would feel so connected to people and you would feel empowered, aware of and empowered to be with yourself. Well, that's the very best kind of safety. Because the best kind of safety is the power to feel like I can meet any challenge. No matter what comes up, I can handle it. I'm going to be okay. Mm-hmm. There's no better safety than that.
It's not that it's not going to suck. It'd be terrible.
Yeah.
But you're resilient.
It might feel sucky in that moment. Mm-hmm. Resilience, exactly. Mm-hmm. And that sense of self-empowerment cannot be replaced. Yeah. You can have the top gurus in the room with you, but if you don't have that feeling of self-empowerment, they cannot help you. Yeah. Or you can give your power up to them. You can be like, it's that shaman or that guru or that medicine healing me. Again, externalizing the healing agent instead of, it's me that's healing me. I am the medicine. In terms of safety, we're really aiming towards you helping yourself feel safe by finding your power to do so, your felt sense of that.
That piece has been a long road for me in terms of my own self-empowerment. And I feel like ketamine has sort of fast-tracked that. So I can only imagine that other psychedelics just aid in that. And thank you so much. Before we go, I want to make sure that you let people know how they can learn more about you and your retreats and where should we send them? Everything will be in the show notes in terms of links, but where do you want to send people?
You can find us on Instagram at Ceremonia Circle. You can go to our website, ceremoniacircle.org/noise podcast. We're going to have a great offer for your listeners, a psychedelic healing course that I think you guys will love and can give you tons of great information. Yeah, please join us there. Sign up for one of our webinars or discovery call and meet our alumni. So part of our process is when people come in, we pair them with an alumnus that's like, hey, if you're a single mom, there's this other alumnus that's a single mom. Yes. And we pair you together and they can impart to you their experience. Like, I was so anxious signing up for this. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And then I experienced these things. And now here, look at my life. And then our integration happens in community. So every Sunday, we meet in person and online at our center, which is our church. Mm-hmm. And we do the practice of circling, which is one of the exercises that you'll do every day in our journey towards curiosity, compassion, and self-empowerment. When you sign up, you actually join as a participant into our circling sessions, even before you've gone through our retreat.
Yeah, that's
so you start meeting the alumni and practicing the skills and getting involved in the community. And they were so supportive because everybody's been there.
Like a big sibling almost.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's what church could have been. And I think should have been, right? Back in the quote unquote olden days, people that were in war together on different sides could meet at church and share and break bread together because they would feel safe. It was the haven for community. It's where people would gather, right? Would share information, would support each other. This is not a church where there's sermons from the mount. This is a church where people are coming together and sharing in community their trials and tribulations and their celebrations.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what's the link again? Ceremoniacircle.com/
ceremoniacircle.org/noise podcast.
Noise podcast. Okay. And again, that link will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on today.
You're so
I
welcome.
appreciate just all of your wisdom and extensive knowledge too about the topic and sharing about your community with Ceremonia. And listeners, thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful that you choose to spend it with me and my guests. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. I would be so incredibly grateful if you haven't done so already, if you could leave a review of this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Super easy if you already listen to your shows over there. But if you don't, or maybe you have the app on your phone, but you listen to the show on a different app, if you could leave a review for this show, it matters so much. I wish I could express how much it matters. I also wish that it didn't matter so much, but alas, it does. So if you haven't already, please go review and rate the show. It would mean so much to me. And thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing day.
No one told us the truth about parenthood. Why? This is the podcast everyone needed before they had kids, because now that those little ones are here, there is a lot to unpack. I'm Rachel Shepardota, and I am your host for the podcast No One Told Us, where we tell the truth about parenting and let you in on all the stuff you really should have known about before having kids. I am the founder of Hey Sleepy Baby, but this podcast is so much more than sleep. We'll be diving into all the topics that you really care about and need to know while you do your best job raising those adorable, tiny humans. Our goal is to just make you feel less alone and less overwhelmed. There are so many things that no one tells us before becoming a parent, and I think that we should really pull back the curtain on becoming a first-time or second-time mom or dad to share the good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll have a little education, a little fun, and a whole lot of heart that goes into each and every episode. So join me and our amazing guests each week to hear us talk about what no one told us.